This is the One and All podcast, a proud member of the Dunham Audio Network.
Can you actually just give us? Can you just give us like a little thing that you can auto tune in post?
Yeah. So
right
this
here?
is what auto tune sounds like. Hey.
We will always be the same. Our beliefs will be unchanging and unwavering. We believe continually in one truth, but for all humanity. In one Savior, but for all people. One truth that will be delivered in love and compassion, connecting every one person to all that God has promised them.
Welcome all to the One and All podcast.
Welcome one and all.
Welcome one and all to the one. I thought that'd be a little bit redundant. That wonderful voice is the voice of Ben Lounsbury, and me, who's talking, is Aaron Magnuson, and we are the co-hosts of the One and All podcast. And today we get to sit down with Sean Lord, the lead youth pastor of One and All.
Love him.
Love him.
Brilliant,
it was
man.
An insightful conversation.
Yeah, we get to know a little bit more about Sean, his upbringing, how he got involved in youth ministry, which is so inspiring. And to know, if I had a teenager at the moment, I would be overjoyed to know I could send them to One and All Youth, to O&A Youth as they're going by, and just know that Sean's the one leading it is exciting.
Yep, we can't wait for you to meet him. Here he is.
Wow. I tried to assume where you were going to be so you could just swing that thing right in. How did I do?
Pretty good, dude. You thought I was a little shorter than I really am, but
Dang. I tried to get the thing out of your eyesight. Hey,
Sean,
cheers,
thanks
guys.
for bringing the coffee.
Absolutely.
We'll talk about it at the end.
Cheers, Sean Lord. Can
Cheers,
we?
Sean.
No, we can't ching.
Can't.
Well,
Probably safer to not do that.
Corona, dude.
Yeah, do a little.
Flick your cups. What are we drinking, Sean?
this is Ritual coffee, based out of San Francisco.
Oh,
Very well-known roaster.
It is good, but it's brewed. No, why don't you spend a little bit of time on the roaster, because we are always looking for sponsors. So, and the off chance that
Dude, if you could
Barista
get
Sean
sponsored
Lord.
by Trade Coffee, that's the thing. I think I told both of you guys about it. It's
Oh,
like
that's
this
the link?
website. Yeah. And you can order coffee from anywhere. And it's like the actual coffee places are the ones that send it to you, and they send you really fresh roasts. And so when we got this, like when we looked on the date, it was roasted like 2 days ago.
Oh, see, I misunderstood. So,
Yeah.
so what you sent me, the link that you sent me was it's like a Michael Scott paper company. It's a middle, just like Dunder Mifflin. So it's a middleman that grabs coffee from different places. So you did use that service, but the roastery that you particularly got from that service is Ritual.
Yeah, Ritual.
Gotcha.
I was going to bring you guys Madcap. It was
Okay.
the one I have really enjoyed recently, but I finished it yesterday. So and
Well,
I
there you go.
assumed I would.
Yeah.
I finished it in
Rip.
one day.
Yeah. But
You know
this
what
one's been really good.
So, man, I want to say so much about this already. We'll save some for the end,
Have to save some for the end.
but just a little bit of a hint. It's like a pancake breakfast is what it's like to me right now. Not in sweetness, but just in comfort.
It's good.
That's well said. I'm going to reserve my thoughts until the end, and it's worth staying till the end because this was brewed in a very special way.
Yeah, well, I want to comment.
Of.
I want to comment on this real quick.
Yeah.
Have you seen the movie Ratatouille?
Yes.
Have you seen that, Ben?
Yeah.
So the scene where at the very end where the food critic eats that ratatouille and he has that flashback to when he's a kid and he like hurt his knee falling off the bike. That's what I just thought of right now. You're talking about the pancake breakfast. That you're having that moment.
Some experience as a child I had.
Yeah.
a pancake breakfast from back in the day.
Yeah.
A good. Is that for our listening audience, Ben? Is that your most comfortable breakfast food? Like, is that?
No, actually, I was going to mention it's strange that I said that as a like
So it's not like ratatouille
potentially
at all.
a positive thing.
I actually
because-
hate pancakes.
Yeah, right. Well, I won't say hate. So I'm not a huge sweets guy.
That's right.
which is why I tried to distinctly say not for the taste as much as the feeling of a pancake breakfast. But dude, I'm bacon, eggs, salt all day. Over like sometimes a waffle, but just if there's anything else on the menu, I'll probably pick
savory.
Yeah, something else other than pancakes and waffles and syrup and all that. Chicken and waffles is nice. Fried chicken and waffles.
Good, dude.
Well, you can take the duration of this podcast to figure out how you want to tie in why you said pancake breakfast for this cup of coffee.
Let's really dissect that for a second.
You seen that movie?
What are the pancakes in your life?
Yeah.
You know? And
What are you trying to get through?
Well, Sean, every guest that we have come in here for the first time, we have them describe the room that you're sitting in. Maybe where people are, because we always think that it's helpful for the listening audience. Ben describes this really well. I'm giving my crack at it for the listening audience, just to know where these voices are existing, kind of the feel. So give your best crack at describing where you are right now.
like in one word?
No, just a description.
The first word that comes to mind is dungeon.
It's a new one.
Yeah.
We've gotten similar.
Cold is another word,
Okay.
but comfortable. Like a comfortable dungeon.
So what Sean is saying is it feels like home.
Feels like I just ate some pancakes. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, I think it's helpful when you hear voices to know like where are they sitting in relation to each other. Because when you hear them, they're just everyone's on top of each other, right? That can't be true.
It's true. Yeah, we're not on top of each other.
That would be
we're-
funny. That would be funny when we go into phase 2 or phase 3 of exiting this coronavirus, whatever it is, doing a podcast where that is actually the case. And then our listening audience has to guess the order
Of the stack?
of the stack.
Well, Sean,
Yeah.
we want to know more about you, Sean Lord. Who is Sean Lord? Obviously, you are leading the youth here at ONE&ALL Church with O&A Youth. But before we even get to all that, who are you? Where'd you come from? Where'd you grow up? Let us in a little bit so we understand more of you and understand the heart, and we can get to all the stuff as it stands today later. But let us in.
Yeah. Grew up in Huntington Beach, California.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, it's cool. I feel like every Huntington Beach kid, though, doesn't like it growing up. Like, for some reason, you just like... I feel like kids now do, because now Huntington Beach is kind of big.
That's interesting. I grew up in Costa Mesa, and I liked it because I didn't know anything else. But as soon as I think I've explained this before on one of the episodes, but as soon as I left, I moved to Inland Empire area, Elsinore, Lake Elsinore, Temecula, Marietta. As soon as I left, I started to not like it going back. So
Right.
it's strange. I didn't not like it at the time. When I was there, I actually did. But then when I left, I felt more like I guess a Huntington Beach native.
Right.
Did you not like it?
No, I don't know. Well, I wasn't a surfer growing up. Like, I was into sports, and then in high school, I was really into like playing music and stuff. And so I think for me, it was like, I don't fit in here. Like, everyone's a surfer, and then like I'm this kid who plays drums and plays sports. You know what I mean? Like, it was just like there isn't anything for me here. You know, but
I always forget you're a drummer.
yeah, dude, I haven't played here yet. That's why.
Hardcore drummer.
Yeah, dude.
That's his pitch.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're
Rowdy?
listening, Rowdy, we need to get him in. It's interesting to hear you say that though, because I always wonder. I grew up in a small town in the middle of nowhere, Oregon, which is much different than Huntington Beach, and it just is fascinating for me to hear somebody say who lives in like maybe one of the most coveted places in the States. Like, yeah, I couldn't wait to get out of there. And it made sense in my context. Yeah, small town in Oregon. Everyone's like, yeah, I'm getting out. Can't wait to get out of here. Graduate high school and get out of here. So I want you to continue, but I'm interested to hear, maybe that's just like a youth thing that all youths go through.
Might just be a spoiled thing. Like, just spoiled to live in this really cool city.
Yeah.
But I will say, I'll come back to this later, but like when I was a youth pastor up in Merced, which is a small town up in Central Valley, 70,000 people up in this city, nothing around it. And every one of them would dream of living in Huntington Beach. And I felt like God brought me there to tell them, like, because they all had this dream in their head, like, if I lived there, I'd be happy. And it was like, hey, I lived there and I wasn't happy. You know what I mean? Like, before I knew Jesus, like, I wasn't happy there. And so, like, so many people in those smaller towns think, once I go off to school, if I'm able to go to school in the Bay Area or New York, like, then I'll be fulfilled and happy. And it was like every message, it's like, nope, it won't do it. I promise, you know? But yeah, I grew up in Huntington Beach, and my mom was a Christian all growing up, loves Jesus, and my mom's testimony is really cool, but that would be a whole side tangent. But she became a Christian when I was born, basically. And so I remember, I have memories of her opening up her Bible in the morning, like, you know, waking up in the morning and she's having her devotional. Like, I still remember those moments. And when I went to youth group, did all the things, when I got into high school, really began to really question my faith. There's some addiction in my home. And so that was a lot of like conflict and stuff. And so I just didn't really understand why God would allow that to happen, and started really questioning a lot of things. By, you know, junior year of high school, I'd call myself an atheist, more so to make my mom mad. But, you know, I wasn't a Christian. And, a lot of things happened, but eventually.
Where'd you go to school?
Went to Fountain Valley High School.
Okay.
Yeah. And went to college, went to Cal State Fullerton. While in college, God started putting different people in my life. I got really into philosophy, and I love to like argue with Christians and stuff. And like,
and whether Chick-fil-A is worth it or not.
Yeah.
So this wasn't, and I do want to pause here for like just a second. It wasn't just Sean Lord, I'm an atheist because I don't want to engage with what I grew up in at home. It wasn't just like a blanket statement so you could get out of a conversation. Like, you were actively vying for atheism. Like, you were really an atheist, not just I don't believe in religion stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. To me, and I still kind of feel this way of like, you're either in or out. Like, to me, it was either Christianity is the biggest lie that needs to be disproven, right? Or like, it's the truth, and you need to confront that, you know? And so for me, like, as a high schooler, like, I was confronted with that pretty quick of like, and I was like, no, I don't want anything to do with it. And so I felt like it was like my mission to like tell people why they were wrong. Because what I found was like a lot of people I had conversations with hadn't really thought through some even just common objections to the Christian faith that, you know, I would Google, like Google what are some common objections, you know, whatever. And I found out I'd have a lot of conversations like that. And then when I got into college, I started taking a lot more philosophy classes and stuff, got really interested in philosophy. And I found this out later, but, you know, in this pivotal moment when I was 21, I was in 2 philosophy classes, and I had the same teacher for both classes. And I later found out that he was a Christian. I didn't know that at the time, but he was just a very reasonable like professor, and he was the first person to really give like weight to arguments for the existence of God. And I started to just get wrecked by that. My mom set me up with this guy, Dan, who's a philosophy professor at Loyola Marymount. He's the chair of philosophy there. Wow. Incredibly bright guy. And me and him started getting breakfast and stuff together, and I would ask him questions, and he loves Jesus. And when I was 20,
you guys have pancakes?
We wouldn't have pancakes. It all comes full circle, dude. But when I was 21, I eventually gave my life to Christ. Like, I moved back in with my mom at that point. And I remember like one night kind of having just like this epiphany of just like, I think I'm a Christian. And I went, like, literally woke my mom up and was like, I think I'm a Christian. And she started crying. And it was just kind of like this movie, you know, moment. And she literally prayed with me, and I accepted Jesus right there. Wow. And then I remember it was Mother's Day the following Sunday. And she was like, will you go to church with me? And I was like, that's so cliche. You know, I can't do it. You know, I can't do it. I'll get judged, you know? Yeah. And so I literally waited a week to not, because I didn't want to go on Mother's Day. And I was like, I'll give you a Mother's Day present like the next week, and I'll go to church. And I went to church, and for the first time in my life, I had that experience that I'm sure a lot of people listening to this have had, where like no one else in the room was there. It was just God speaking to me, you know? And I felt like the message was on forgiveness, and it was like, there's so much bitterness that I had in my own life. And I was like, oh my goodness. Like, it was the first time that I felt like the Holy Spirit like working in me and like revealing things in me and stuff. And I never looked back. Within a year, started serving in that church. This is the church that I grew up in and grew up arguing with people about and stuff. Like my old high school leaders in the youth group were still there. My old youth pastor, actually, that was the youth pastor at the time, he became the lead pastor. And so I got to like serve under him and stuff. And it was just really, it was a really cool thing. And I mean, he kind of called out of me like, hey, I think you should serve in youth. Like, I think you should be a leader. And I was like, I don't know if I'd be very good at that. And he was like, no, I think you would be really good at it. And he developed me. And, you know, within 4 years, I felt a call to full-time ministry. I was a leader I got incoming freshman boys. I was their leader all the way through high school. And when they graduated, started applying places and became a youth pastor. Wow. I've been doing that ever since.
You know what's cool is you're hearing that. I mean, I've always seen you and known you're so good with youth, the youth ages, just being able to connect with them. But hearing a little bit of the backstory, it's having that place to relate with people that are maybe doubting or are unsure. It's like, yeah, I was there too.
Right.
So like being on both sides is so valuable. And so it's cool to hear where you were at. And that like this didn't even happen till you're 21, you know?
Right.
Yes. And I've heard a lot of stories, people who have found Jesus. And I have never heard one that is told the way you articulated it. And I think it's really cool. And I'd just be curious if you have, just to stay in that moment for a second, you articulated it that you woke up and you thought you were a Christian. Like it was definitive and not definitive at the same time, where it was like, and I think what that beautifully articulates, and I'd be curious if you had more thoughts on that piece, because that's what stood out to me specifically from what you were sharing. It's like this beautiful articulation of what all of our journeys are with Jesus, that it's a road we're continually walking. And yeah, there might be really like landmark moments, but it's not this one-time prayer done. It's all over. I'm on the other side of the fence now. But you just woke up one morning, and it was like your heart had been softened, and you're like, oh, I think I'm ready to start this journey of getting to know God better. I don't even know if you have anything else to say on that. It's just really interesting that you articulated it in that way of like, I think I'm a Christian now.
Yeah, I didn't even realize I articulated it that way, but that's how it was. You know, I think it's like I was 51% there. You know what I mean? Like it was like I was more than half. And so like, but I felt that to where I was like, my whole life had been under that, right? There'd been moments where I'm like, maybe, and I'd be let down or something in my life would happen. I'd be like, see, this is why, you know, and that was the kind of constant battle before I was 21. And then, there's this morning where I was like uncomfortable with it almost. Of just like, I think I'm leaning towards this. And I think it was longer than just one day of me really processing that and understanding that. I kind of shortened the story a little bit, but but yeah, there definitely was that day where I was kind of uncomfortable confronting that, you know? And I think that, I mean, you know, Jeff talks about this, like we have people, you know, giving their lives to Christ every weekend, you know, like, and I think sometimes from the outside looking in, it looks like, man, they're 100%. They're like, they have it all figured out. They have everything lined up. And really, like, I'm sure a lot of them were feeling like I did, or I'm like, I think I'm 51%. Like, I think I'm like just the majority, right? Like in the sense of like, I'm not fully there yet, but enough to like take a step forward. And then the thing that's so funny is like part of the Christian faith is like, once you take that step forward though, you move, that goes up exponentially. The more and more you start having that experience of God speaking to you and revealing things to you, and you have that devotional time where you're like, where's this been my whole life? You know, and you start having those moments, it's pretty accelerated, you know what I mean? But it takes that first, you know, step of faith, like that 51%, you know?
It reminds me of followers of Jesus in Jesus's day. Of course, different people have different personalities. They commit on different levels. Their velocity is different, you know. But I would imagine Jesus walked up to me and said, hey, you know, follow. Not even hey, just follow me. And these people that ended up being his disciples, there had to have been some degree of like, okay.
What's your name again?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly.
Some degree of like, this, I guess. but not just like fully 100% like you said, but like a 51er where you're like,
Right.
I need to figure out more. Or I need to, there's something here.
Yeah. And I think, something you said, Ben, I think, it's brought me like a unique experience within youth ministry for sure, that I can't tell you the number one thing that I talk to about parents is when their kid was like I was in high school. Mm-hmm. And one of the coolest things, and this is like, how God brings these things full circle in like the redemption story, right? Like I get to tell them like, man, I was that kid, mm-hmm. and not in like and look how great I am now, not that, but in man, I was that kid. And what I always tell them is like, this is the importance of keeping the bridge intact between you and them. Like as a parent, especially for me and my mom, like to this day, like I love my mom, and she's such a source of strength for me even to this day. And she had this ability to keep that bridge intact to where whenever I was ready to walk across it and ask her something, like she was always there. I never felt like I was bugging her.
That's good.
Even though now looking back, I totally was bugging her, at different times. And to really walk through that process with them. And even the fact that, I love it when I have students come up to me now who have questions about things and they're like, am I weird? Or like, this is crazy. And I'm like, dude, this is my love language. This is like what I love talking about and thinking about. I literally just had a conversation yesterday, video chat on Discord, actually, just with an old student of mine who's wrestling with these questions in college, and he's just like, am I a bad Christian for having these questions? And I'm like, no, this is beautiful. Like you're actually thinking about these things.
Yes.
The amount of people I know who maybe have these questions and are afraid to talk about them, to me won't have as deep of a faith because they're ultimately hiding from these things that they have. Like God's not scared of those things, and so bring those to the surface and start talking about it, but
it's beautiful to see how the Holy Spirit can move through the simple yet very complex thing of love. Mm-hmm. Right? You mentioned between you and your mother, mm-hmm. the love that was there, that just kept it alive. She wasn't, one to, because unfortunately I've seen some scenarios where you get cut off if you don't share the same belief or something,
right.
and
Mm-hmm.
it's unfortunate to see that, even though your reasons for doing it can be out of love for the individual, right? You have this strong faith and belief, and you want the best for them, and you believe that is the best for them. But there's that bit of like you said, keeping the bridge there. That's like so important.
You described it as keeping the bridge there. I've referred to the same thing as always making sure that you have a seat at their table,
right?
And never dismiss it. And in a lot of cases, it's not the head of the table that is dismissing people. It's people at the table just getting up and leaving,
right?
Giving up, forfeiting their seat to continue sitting there. And I like how you've kudos to your mom, because sometimes those people sitting at the table need to have a texting conversation with somebody who isn't there to keep them sane while they're still sitting. Because there is hurt and there is real things that happen when the person that you're trying to love does things that hurt you. But when you can absorb those and have those conversations elsewhere, not with that person, and keep your seat there or keep that bridge built, you never know when that person is going to approach your seat or across that bridge. And so I've always tried to, since I've really understood the magnitude of that, really always tried to focus on any relationships that God has brought to my life, making sure I keep a seat at their table for that one moment. And I even think about you sharing, I'd be curious to hear how the professors that you had and even some of those mentors that you had, that just continued to pour, even though they had no idea what they were pouring into or what they were pouring into would turn out to be. How does that help you when you're constantly doing that with hundreds here at ONE&ALL of youth that you have no idea when that flip is going to switch, or the switch is going to flip, or what you're pouring in is going to connect, or if it even will? How do you kind of deal with? Has that helped your perspective, and how do you deal with that aspect?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's helped me love people without expectation, right? Like I think that's the key, is loving people, serving people without an immediate life transformation in front of me. You know, like, a story, I have so many of these little stories like this, but one of my favorite ones is, so Bill Stafiri was my youth pastor growing up. He's now the lead pastor at a church in Fountain Valley called Beach Point. Awesome guy. Shout out to Bill. But when he was a youth pastor, I was a junior in high school. My life's kind of fallen apart at this time. My dad was in rehab at the time. I don't want to go super far into it, but like, stuff was just kind of falling apart. My mom kind of forced me to go to summer camp that year while my dad's like in rehab at this time. And I don't want to tell anybody about it. And this is like in the beginning of my like atheist stage. And Bill, out of, my mom, I found out this later, she would email Bill every week and just be like, can you please do something? Can you please help me? Like, he's hurting, and I was an annoying kid. I was kind of disrespectful. And Bill, like at camp, said, hey, let's go to the malt shop. It's at Thousand Pines. Like, hey, let's go to the malt shop. And that's what I'll answer any question you have about the faith. And he spent like 3 hours with me, sitting with me in the malt shop as I debated with him and I tried to prove him wrong and I tried to, whatever, being super disrespectful. At the end of these 3 hours, I literally said to him, you didn't answer my questions. I want to go home. And I literally called my mom and I went home. It's like my junior in high school. That's like that's where I was at. And to think of that moment, I think of, years later, probably 7 years later, Bill is now lead pastor at this church. The last weekend I was at Beach Point before I go and take my first job as a youth pastor, they like commissioned me, right? And so I'm up on stage and Bill just starts crying. It's like this 7 years 7 years ago, he invested in me. And he knew like I was worth investing in, whether I turn my life around or not, and like I like looked at him and I was like, like I had the tears welling. I feel them right now.
Yep.
And it was such a powerful moment. And it's something I'll never forget.
That's
and
right.
so for me, as I'm investing in people, what I tell my leaders is, and what I tell parents is play the long game. Like play the long game. This is not about like an immediate result. This isn't, I have the perfect answer right now. And like, this is going to fix them, right now. I play the long game. I love people because they're worthy to be loved. And I, spend time with people because they're worthy of that. And that's fulfilling God's call on my life in that moment. Not because later on they'll become a pastor or later on, they'll have some big stage, But what's so cool is that you do see that happening, right? Like you do see moments of that, of like through faithfulness, but there's tons of stories of people being faithful and you don't hear the other side of it, So that's why I tell people just play the long game, and it's worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. It's cool to see how God has placed, intentionally for all of us, but it's cool to hear. Ben and I get a front row seat to hearing these stories of God placing intentional markers and people in your life to get you to this point, and how cool for your youth pastor to see that, to be rewarded, for God to just honor him that way, for him to be able to see that. I was actually thinking about that when you were talking about going back to church with your mom that Mother's Day, and thinking about just how tough it would have been for some people to be like, really?
Yeah.
Like, did this guy really, it's kind of like how we look at Kanye, right? Like, did God really do something in Kanye? I just compared you to Kanye, so there you go. Hopefully that gets you some credit.
I feel very honored.
With you. But I'm sure we all know, I think at least the people in this room know, and probably some of our listeners, people who have had that miraculous Jesus encounter transformation, and it takes a little while for you to buy into it.
Yeah.
So I just think that that's really cool. But regarding kind of that commissioning moment, what was your process? Because you didn't like come out of college and go into youth pastoring right away. This is me hinting at everybody wanting to hear you, your security guard, your undercover stuff. But I am curious, what got you? When did you feel that call, and how did you know that God's calling me to youth ministry?
Yeah, so 21 became a Christian, 22 started serving in youth ministry at Beach Point, and then was a leader, got these incoming freshman boys, and they're all unchurched boys, and I love them, still friends with them to this day.
That's awesome.
Which is super cool. And I knew like so at this point I wanted to be a police officer because I won't tell any stories, but I worked at Macy's at the time. If you're listening to this and you have a junior high or high school student that comes to Wednesday nights, they've heard a million stories from me. So I won't bore you with them now. But I wanted to be a police officer and I was pretty set on that. And then 2 years in, I remember this guy, Dan, who we talked about, we're getting breakfast and I tell him like, he's like, what are you going to do? Like, what are you thinking right now? And I'm like, oh, still a police officer. And he's like, oh, cool. So you feel like God, that's like what he's calling you to do. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, well, have you like prayed about it? Like, and I was like, well, and in my head, I was like, well, I'm a Christian. Like, why didn't I pray about this? And so I'm like, okay, like I'll just out of obligation, like, God, like this is what you want me to do. And for the first time, I just felt like a very heavy, like, no, this is not it. But didn't feel, but do this instead. Just felt like no, this is not what I'm calling you to do. And over the course of a couple months of just praying through that, Dan led me through just different practices. Like I fasted, for a week and, cutting out certain meals throughout the day and stuff. And like really trying to discern what God was calling me to do. And it took 2 years for me to really discern that like he was calling me to be a youth pastor. And when I finally felt that, it was, other people calling that in me. But I knew that was a pretty hefty call and I wanted to make sure like I heard God right.
Yeah.
And so I asked, so Dan, the guy Bill, and then another guy who's important in my life is this guy Jason, who he was my youth leader when I was in junior high. And I reached out to him and I asked all of them, like, would you pray like if I'm supposed to be a youth pastor or not? And in a week I called all of them and they're all like, yep. Like every one of them just, yep, that's what you're supposed to do.
Wow.
And I was like, okay. And I moved forward with it. But yeah, I graduated from Cal State Fullerton with a degree in psychology and philosophy. It wasn't biblical studies degree at all, and so it was really interesting for me to like use that degree. However, if you were to get a degree for ministry from a like secular university, it's probably the best one to get.
Oh yeah.
So that's actually really worked out.
Well, I mean, especially, the mind cage of the youth.
Yes.
What appropriate things to study.
Yeah, like learning developmental psychology.
I don't think I knew that about you.
Yeah.
Because I have a similar story. I've never gone to Bible college. I went to a secular university and got my degree in human development and family sciences with a minor in sociology.
Yeah.
Took some psychology classes, took some philosophy classes. Very fascinated. So I always say I got my degree in people, which translates well to the church. But that's interesting. So have you gone back to Bible college since?
I have not.
Yeah, so we're in the same boat then.
Yeah.
Which I now, and I don't think that's a knock. I actually really,
100%.
really, actually, I won't say my thought. Why do you think that is not? Why do you agree with me that that's not a knock?
Well, I think so. Let me just say this: like, I am jealous of people who became a Christian before college and were able to get like a biblical studies degree. For sure, I'm jealous of that. However, I also see the unique experience of taking classes at a secular university and hearing from mainly atheist professors and having a good support system behind me to think about those things, And so like I mean, many openly atheist philosophy teachers. I took human evolution from first day of class. He's just like, I'm an atheist. Evolution proves atheism. And so I took all those classes and I got out of it with a better understanding of their arguments and their worldview. And to me, that set me up really well. But I 100% am not knocking people who, because I'm jealous of that, and I will eventually go back. I've been saying that for 10 years, but I will eventually go back. And, but what I did have is, I had a mentor who, has his doctorate and literally met with me every Thursday at Corner Bakery in Fountain Valley. And we would go through Dallas Willard together. We'd go through, these books together. So I feel like I got a degree through this relationship with this guy, Dan, And so, and that's been invaluable to me to have that.
Dang, Corner Bakery?
Yeah, dude.
What did you think of Corner Bakery while you were there?
Hey, you know what, dude? There's always seating.
As good as Chick-fil-A?
Yeah. There's always seating. And you can stay in there for as long as you want. That was like kind of the thing. And it's somewhat clean.
So for someone like me, I'll represent the audience, listening audience who is unfamiliar with Corner Bakery. What does it feel like my office is kind of cold, dungeony, or what's the deal with Corner Bakery?
Yeah, same feeling. Yeah,
like
no knock on
home.
Corner Bakery. I haven't been since I moved. So
I will say they have good food.
yeah.
I just found it interesting that like that was the meeting place.
It's a convenient spot,
Anyway,
So you got into youth, and what was your progression to One&ALL?
Yeah, so like I said, I was up in Merced, city up in Central Valley off the 99, called the Gateway to Yosemite. So it's just like an hour and a half from Yosemite, beautiful. Was there for 4.5 years, and it was an awesome community, but definitely was a bad fit in the church. Like I had very intentionally built like a youth ministry that was growing and thriving, but I realized the importance of having an entire church that is focused on growing and evangelizing. Because what I ended up doing is graduating these seniors into a church that didn't seem to really want to reach them. And that's something that from the outside, when I came here with CCV, like that's something I always had heard about CCV is like, man, this is a church that really cares about people, that wants people far from God to come near. And so position opened up, had a relationship with the lead youth pastor at the time. And he got me really plugged in and stuff. And I've been so thankful to be here ever since, just to be in a church to where, it's not uncommon for, when the youth ministry is growing and we're having decisions for Christ and stuff, it's just like we're being like shadowed almost by the whole church because every ministry is expanding, every ministry is growing. And so to be like pushed, in that sense of like to continue to reach those far from God, is just such a cool thing. And to be a part of like a community of people that are doing that has been really, really cool. And so, I've been here for, it's been 3 years now. Yeah, it's officially been 3 years.
Yeah,
I think this month it's been 3 years.
And about a year, right? Is it coming up on a year since you've taken the lead of
Yeah, it's been a year. Yep.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And then, so tell us a little bit about O&A.
Yeah. So, first off, so we're called O&A.
Yep.
So a lot of people think, coming from a church that was an acronym, right? It was Christ Church of the Valley, CCV. Yeah. We're very intentionally O&A, because, one, it's easy for someone in high school to invite someone to O&A. It was always something I heard from students was that like, it's hard to say like, hey, come to students, and so it creates an invite factor. But also O&A refers to like the three things that we do in youth. So it refers to us being open and alive in our worship, original and authentic in our community, and going over and above in our service. And so that's O&A. So when you hear O&A, those listening, it's not referring to One&ALL as a whole. It's referring to specifically O&A as like Wednesday nights when we meet. Like O&A is referring to what happens Wednesday nights when we meet here at San Dimas and also at Rancho. We're open and alive, original and authentic, and we go over and above.
I did not know that. I knew O&A was unique. Nothing else at One&ALL gets to take O&A. Nothing is abbreviated down to that. Everything is One&ALL except youth being O&A. I did not know that you had those three statements: open and alive, original and authentic, over and above. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah,
and it's printed on a mug that Aaron's drinking out of right now.
As I'm saying it, he was like, "Oh,
yeah." He turned the mug around. He's like, "There it is."
Those aren't just random words.
So I am. O&A also has some incredible swag, and so Sean was kind enough to give me a cup, which I'm drinking out of, that is usually displayed up on the shelf. I'm going to take a picture of this mug right now. Actually,
you can, Sean. If I'm just going to give you some creative input here for O&A, you should add at the bottom of those three things, just because O&A also is a good and just print that on the mug. And when people show up to O&A Youth, you open the doors and
I actually thought about starting
take it or leave it.
I thought about starting a chant, like at summer camp. Like this year was like going to be the year. Then we're at camp, and we would chant like "Away, away, away,
nice.
away." Like that would be so rad.
Yeah, that's better than mine.
Yeah,
that's
they're
true.
both good.
That just
It's the thought that counts.
You have the right essence of that, Ben.
You know what's interesting? Okay, I had this thought way earlier, before we continue to get into O&A. you mentioned something about your journey of faith being kind of weighted in the questions of, well, it's either a total lie or it's true. Like
Right.
it can't be in between. And it reminded me of a quote from Bono from U2. He was in an interview, and I actually used this clip in an Easter opener here years ago. But it's a clip of Bono saying his perspective on the man Jesus as written about in Scripture. And he goes, talking about his journey of faith, he's like, well, he's like, when I look at it, he's either, like, and everyone who writes about him, and we're still talking about it today, it's either he's an absolute madman, and it's been going on this long, or it's true.
Right.
And that was his,
Right.
that was his thing.
Right. It's like the C.S. Lewis, the liar, lunatic, or Lord. Right? Like you have to choose one of those.
Yeah.
Like which one is he? Was he just lying and deceiving everybody and he pulled off the biggest con in human history? Yeah. Was he crazy and he thought, and people just bought into it? Or was he really Lord, But it's good, dude.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. Bono, shout out to we're in the shades.
Well, yeah, you just got compared to Kanye and then quoting from Bono, so you're
take
in a
it,
pretty
dude.
good seat here. Do you feel like the older you get, are there certain things that you feel you have to keep intact to stay relevant? Or
I knew where
feel
you were going that entire time. 100%.
Okay, so how does one do that? And we particularly at ONE&ALL do have a desire. I don't know that we always execute it. This podcast, we try to be as transparent as possible. I don't know that we always execute on it well, but we are always in pursuit of reaching the next generation, not just in our youth department, but church-wide. So I am curious, how do you stay relevant with...
Well, first off, I feel so not relevant most of the time, especially with TikTok. TikTok is just, I feel like every millennial and older just feels like
I can't stand TikTok.
I'm so lost. But that's where they are, and I think I never have to try and be someone that I'm not, right? That's something that I would never want youth to ever do. I would never want anyone to ever be inauthentic. And so, it's in we're original and authentic. Like I'm going to be authentic to who I am as a 34-year-old who doesn't understand TikTok. And however, I think there's something important about always appreciating who a high school student is. I heard this statement from a youth pastor once where he said, youth aren't a problem to be solved, but a wonder to behold. This idea of it's so interesting, especially when I have these one-on-one conversations and I hear what they're dealing with and I hear what's going on. I hear the unique kind of pressures that they feel as a generation. I can sit there and be with them in that moment, and being relevant doesn't mean that I experience those same things, but you can practice empathy as a human being and understand where they're coming from. And so I think because of that, because if I always have a heart that genuinely cares about who they are and what they're growing through, I don't always have to know what the most recent song is or what, how to really interact on the most recent social media app, because that stuff will continue to change more and more.
Yes.
And I think, again, that's to parents listening to this, if you're feeling like I'm so irrelevant, it's like, man, you don't need someone who knows what to say and has the right shoes on and, all those things. What they need is someone who just genuinely cares about them. And
does that strategy transcend all generations? That strategy will always be the strategy?
Yes. And I'll say it's even more true now. The research,
authentic piece.
The authentic piece. Something that, if you didn't know this, people, millennials are always talked about, they're the ones that are, still, people think millennials are the ones graduating college, but they're not. Gen Z is now graduating college. We're already past millennials. Millennials are gone, right? They're
bye-bye.
They're older.
It's all us here.
Yeah.
We're ruling the world.
Yeah. But Gen Z, like a lot of research is coming out now about Gen Z as they're graduating college and stuff. And, one of the values of Gen Z is authenticity, which is so interesting that coming out of this generation of, you think of millennials and you think of like, something like graphic design with millennials, everything's simple, clean. You look at what Gen Z is attracted to and like even just graphic design and art, it's chaotic. It's chaotic. It's all over the place.
It's interesting.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
And it's because they value authenticity. And so to me, more than ever, in the age of social media, everyone can pretend, everyone can put on filters, everyone can mask who they really are, how they're really feeling. They crave so strongly for people just to be real and authentic.
Yeah.
And I feel like to me, this is a huge opportunity for the church that has always valued authenticity. This is, I think most churches would say like, man, that's one of our biggest, we want to be authentic and real and honest, and I think this is a bigger opportunity than ever to show Gen Z like, hey, we're a place where you can be real. You don't have to fake it. And
I think it's inspiring when you do have that quality so forward in your ministry, because I was actually having a conversation the other day talking about what makes something inspirational. I say, why is something inspiring? Because you could try and equate it to preference, right? Oh man, I really liked that. And I was picking at the thought for a while. And I came to the realization, when something is not trying to be something it's not, that's inspiring. Meaning, you can see someone's story that's just, it's messed up. Or maybe it doesn't have a good ending, right? It's like a lot of times we can equate inspiration with the sun after the night and the sunrise and the sailing off into the distance. And like, there's inspirational qualities about that, but I think there's also something inspiring about a story that ends in the dark in a way. So as I was thinking about it, I went, or maybe it's an art piece or maybe a music piece, and it's just someone's trying to be something they're not. Or I use this a lot when mixing. When mixing audio, let me get nerd talk here for a second. When mixing audio, the goal is to not make it something it's not. It's to enhance what was there.
Oh, that's good.
And so, right. So sometimes there's this thing called auto-tune, right? With vocals. And let's say the T-Pain effect is when you slam it on and you get that thing. I use two different songs. Let's say, what's a popular T-Pain song?
Can you actually just give us like a little thing that you can auto-tune in post?
Yeah, so
right
this
here?
is what auto-tune sounds like. Hey, hey. All right, that's what auto-tune sounds like. So let's say a T-Pain song, and then let's say Whitney Houston, I Will Always Love You. And I will always love. Right, super powerful ballad. If you slam the effect, the T-Pain effect, the tune on her, you're making her notes perfect. But there's also a set, you'd hear it and kind of go, this isn't what it was,
right.
But it's not necessarily the effect that's wrong, but it's the application of it.
Right.
And in the T-Pain thing, if you take it off, it'd probably sound funky. It needs that. It needs that.
It was intended
character
for that.
right. So it's when you start making something it's not. That's when, at least for me personally, I realized I'm out. I'm disengaged. Like this isn't you, or that you're. Yeah, what I always related to music a lot of the times, but inspiration. What makes something inspiring? I don't know.
Being authentic.
Had to share that. Yeah, authenticity.
So the attractional piece of, I don't know why I broke it up like that, but the attractional piece of O&A is certainly that value of authenticity. And in turn, you as the leader, you as a leader of leaders on your team, that aspirational value of just be you, and that is what resonates with the youth.
This isn't like a new thing. Like the idea of authenticity and that being like the attractive thing. has existed for a while. So I'm rereading this book right now. It's a favorite of mine. I try to go through it once a year. It's by Henry Nouwen. It's called The Wounded Healer. It was written in 1972. So it's an old book. And one of the things he talks about is this idea of like you leading out of like you yourself being wounded. And so this is like just a quote from the book where he's like, "For the minister is called to recognize the sufferings of his time in his own heart and make that recognition the starting point of his service. Whether he tries to enter into a dislocated world, relate to a convulsive generation, or speak to a dying man, his service will not be perceived as authentic unless it comes from a heart wounded by the suffering about which he speaks. Thus, nothing can be written about ministry without a deeper understanding of the ways in which the minister can make his own wounds available as a source of healing." And he says that's why this book is called The Wounded Healer. And it's just like this powerful,
It's good.
like thought of this idea of like authenticity is the driving factor, because we ourselves, when I'm speaking to youth who have these unique sufferings that they're experiencing with, the rise of social media and now the rise of anxiety and depression, like I have to first recognize those things in my own heart and lead out of that place. And to me, that's like the definition of authentic, right? Is not trying to, because what that does is then I'm not trying to just fix everybody, right? I am relating to them because I, in my own eyes, have also seen those sufferings in my own heart, and I've dealt with those things. And that brings empathy to a whole nother level, And so that's something I've always led out of. And especially we have leaders in our ministry who are from all different ages. We have some that graduated high school recently, and we have some, in their 50s and 60s. Mm-hmm. And every single one of them is capable of leading out of their own wounds, right? Is leading out of the suffering that they have experienced and the healing that they've experienced through that, and that they can always be authentic and real. And in fact, some of our best leaders are ones that are older and have more to offer in a lot of ways, right? So a lot of people have this misconception that I have to be this young college student to run around and play Frisbee, with a high schooler.
Have a phone, TikTok. All
exactly.
That. Right.
Yeah.
And it's a great picture of grace too. You don't have to be perfect. You just be committed, and that's awesome.
And I also want to be clear, you're not saying that in order for me to talk to a youth about the depression or their wounds, I must have the same wounds and scars myself.
Not at all. It's this idea of, if you look at something like loneliness, that's something that I think that all of us in some degree can understand, or when you're anxious about your future, right? At some point, everyone has experienced some sort of anxiety in their life, right? Whether it's like clinical or whether it's you're unsure about the future. Like you can relate to those things on some level in your own heart, of your, unwillingness to let go of things, right? That causes anxiety and worry. It's those things. Yeah, 100%. You will not be able to have all the life experiences that everyone has, but you can relate to the core of what that thing is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's an encouraging word for all of our listeners to start engaging that way and identify your wounds and be authentic.
Yeah, 100%.
Sean, as we round third here, tell us some things going on with O&A you're excited about in the next few months. I know things are different during this season, this COVID season, but what are some things you're excited about, people can look forward to, possibly get involved in?
Yeah, so in this season of everything going online, we have an online experience on Wednesdays. And I just encourage you, if you're not a high school or junior high student, if you're just curious what we're about and what we look like.
Sean's got a great beard.
Yeah, thanks, man.
He does have a great beard. That is worth checking out all in and of itself. We'll link to all of this stuff in the notes.
Yeah.
But
link to a picture of my beard. Yeah.
Does it have its own Instagram profile?
It does not.
Oh, okay.
It does not.
But you do. So we will link to those things.
Okay.
But
I'll take it. And, but if you just want to see what we're about, we don't check ID, when you come in to watch the stream. And so you can come to the online experience and check it out. And that's something that I've been really excited about, to just worship together. That's something that has been, if you talk to anyone who's ever been on a Wednesday night, the key takeaway that everybody has is like the worship is so powerful. And, worship is more than just the music, right? Like that's a key component of it, right? But like even just the whole night is this very like powerful, passionate like worship experience. And so we get to experience that online together, which has been awesome. We still have community groups happening. And so we're actually going to be relaunching them in June again. Usually we don't do them in the summer, but we're like, hey,
nice.
This is a time where people are feeling more isolated than ever.
Yeah.
And which I'll just say right now, as a part of that is, something I'm seeing as I have students reaching out to me and ask them how they're doing and stuff. One of the most powerful teaching moments I've had is making this point of, we tell students all the time that, the idea of the gospel is ultimately like you experiencing God's life for you and not you living out your own life of how you think it should be. Mm-hmm. And one of the most powerful teachers of that has been this experience where students are given more and more time to do whatever they want and to be on their phones more than ever, to isolate more than ever. And when I talk to them, I'm like, how's that going for you? Right. Mm-hmm. And they're miserable. Mm-hmm. And it's just like, this is what I've been trying to tell you. Right. I just haven't been able to. Now you've been given to it. Right. And now they're realizing like, oh, this is not enough. This technological world isn't enough in and of itself without people connected to it. But the beauty of that is we can use technology to stay connected to people. And so we still have community groups that meet 6 to 7. I'll be relaunching those. You can sign up on our website, which that's been so cool. Leaders love that. They still stay connected. And then the big thing is summer camp is like our best week of the year, every single year. But because of obviously everything happening, we won't be meeting at Biola, which is usually where our camp is for high school, and it's going to be there for junior high as well. But we are preparing like an online experience. And so we haven't released a lot of details yet because we're still trying to figure those out. Everything's changing daily. And so next week could look radically different. But we'll try to, the whole point of summer camp is to expose people to community and the power of community.
That's awesome.
And so in summer camp, you go into a group, whether you like it or not, you're put into a group and you literally are in small group with that group every single day. You worship with that group. You eat meals with that group. Like you're with that group all week and you experience community at a deep level. And always what happens is after that summer camp experience, more people want to sign up to be in community groups. And so whatever summer camp looks like, it'll be online in some form, whether we can meet in small groups with people or whether everyone still has to be online and we're still stay at home, whatever it is. The focus of it will be like, how do we create community? How do we instill the value of community so people can experience that and be changed by that? And so, it's hard to say what's coming up because,
no, that's perfect.
I don't even know.
That's perfect, Sean.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, that's great. And you can find all this stuff in the notes section, wherever you're listening right now.
Yeah. And Sean is not only, I think, a well-oiled leader.
It's a great way to...
Yes. He
like
lotions daily. Yeah, beard oil, great skin. No, I think you're a brilliant leader, brilliant youth leader. And so
thanks,
wanted to shout that out. Thank you for hanging out. But not only that, he's also a brilliant barista.
Add barista to your... Have we talked about barista?
I say barista.
Are both acceptable?
I think we both know what we're saying.
Okay.
I thought you were about to say like, no, they're not, but it's okay.
No. I always
Sean,
expect that answer from Ben.
I say barista, but now I'm questioning
barista. It might be an Australianism.
Oh, okay.
But
they do make better coffee. So maybe baristas make better coffee
like
than baristas.
Isaiah,
okay.
or like Isaac, or they say some things just slightly differently. So that might be one of the things.
Yeah.
This
barista
coffee was
versus barista.
Coffee.
Interesting.
Let's talk about this. We always end our episodes after we've shared a cup of coffee together, because that's one of the staples of this podcast. Evaluating this cup of coffee. But something unique happened this episode where it was actually brewed for us by our guest. And it was brewed in a special way.
Yeah.
Sean, do you care to tell us? We already talked about what type of coffee, where it came from, but how was it brewed?
In a Chemex. So a Chemex, any coffee snob is probably like, oh yeah, I have a Chemex. Exactly what that is. It's just a pour over. So it like looks like a vial, like a science vial or something. And you, it's just very simple to filter, put the ground coffee on it. I ground it fresh. It was freshly roasted.
How coarse do you grind it? Coarse or not coarse? For this particularly?
I put it on medium. It's got a medium. You don't want it too coarse because you want to be able to extract, but you don't want it too fine.
Or else it's clogged.
Now, does it take forever? Because anytime there's a Chemex, it's like I got to put 25 minutes aside for this.
I don't think so.
Okay,
I think
good,
it was
you're
pretty quick. I mean, also it's I think the longest thing is heating up the kettle. That honestly takes the longest. I do that first, but I have an electric one. Just turn that on.
I just got one of those. Amazing. Game changer.
Yeah. But is it a gooseneck kettle?
No, it's not. Yeah, coffee people would be very upset. Yeah. Do you have a weighted handle?
No.
Oh, okay. That's like a next level, right?
Yeah, ours is like a $30 one.
Oh, okay.
So
nice.
it wasn't anything crazy.
But it's got the gooseneck.
Yeah, it got the gooseneck, and it's like matte black, which I'm all into. It's my aesthetic.
Nice.
So
he's in all black today too.
yeah, these are kind of gray.
And not just today, every day.
Every day.
That
Every day of my
might be
life.
for another podcast.
Yeah.
But Sean, all black.
But yeah, you ground the coffee fresh. That's really important. And then put it in there, pour it over. I think it took. I mean, this is the largest batch I've ever made in that Chemex, and it took me a total of like 7 minutes.
Unbelievable. I'm asking for Chemex from the wrong people.
Yeah.
Okay, one time to make like 4 or 5 cups, it took 45 minutes, and I went, "This isn't worth it."
They're doing it wrong.
It was a friend.
Yeah, I think maybe they're making every cup separate.
They are.
Oh, that's insane. This was one batch.
Yeah, so you did.
Maybe, I mean, they might have. There's different size Chemexes.
I think it was just they maybe didn't have the resources to do anything bulk, so I had to do and they weigh everything and
I weighed it. Yeah,
and it's all like per cup.
Yeah, I put on a scale.
Yeah,
I did. So I mean, for the listeners, I did 50 grams of coffee, and then you measure that 1:17 ratio. This is about 800 grams of water. Put that in.
Beautiful.
Boom, dude. Tastes really good.
And
Came out really well.
Tasted even better than what was just described. This was a great cup of coffee. And usually I'm drinking cold brew. So I have not had a hot cup of coffee on this podcast yet. But I have had a Chemex cup of coffee before. My wife's sister's husband's dad, do the math, was very into it, and on a family vacation one time, showed me how it works, and it is quite fascinating how you push the thing in it. Now, do you use paper filters or do you use like the metal filter?
Paper filter.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I will say you can make.
Are you against the metal filter?
No. Oh wait, are you thinking of the AeroPress or Chemex?
Maybe I'm thinking of AeroPress.
Because I have both.
Okay. Are they similar?
No.
You
AeroPress
called me
is
out.
like a little tube.
That's right. Okay, I'm thinking of the AeroPress.
I think we've been on a video call where I've made it on the AeroPress, possibly. That's why you're thinking of that.
That is probably why I'm thinking of that. Okay.
But when AeroPress, metal filter, I'm not against it. Okay. I think paper tastes better.
Yeah,
but
there you go.
It filters it better.
Yeah.
But you can make cold brew with a Chemex.
I should look into a Chemex. I used to use
Just
the
put
toddy.
some coffee grounds into like a mason jar, store it for 14 hours in your fridge. Make sure they're extra coarse.
Yes.
That's the key. And then you strain it first to get all the big chunks out. Yeah. And then you pour the rest of it, literally pour it into the Chemex filter, and then it'll slowly filter it out. And it tastes really smooth. To me, I've done that a couple times. It's really good.
I got to get into that.
I don't normally drink black coffee because I like the foo-foo espresso, steamed milk. I'm a latte guy. But this is the best Chemex I've ever had, Sean.
Dang, dude.
I've had a fair bit, but it tastes...
And that traveled like 30 minutes too.
It traveled.
So like...
There's like... like almost like caramel notes in it. I don't know if there's a particular flavor of the bean, but it's just that's where I'm getting like that mapley kind of caramel. After that made me think of pancakes earlier.
You're right.
That's what it is. It's not
Thank you
sweet,
for addressing that. Yeah,
but it's not bitter.
Yeah, well, it's Colombian, so it's a Colombian bean, which is more on the sweet side or more like it's less bitter than like an Ethiopian or something.
That's good to know because I always see that. See, I'm not that deep into knowing the Ethiopian versus the Colombian versus the whatever, all these different.
Nor am I.
So when I see Colombian,
I will
be like, hey,
reconsider.
guys, that's
like South America.
the sweeter one.
South America is like my favorite.
Okay.
Like we're more
That's
like
good to know.
Yeah, like African coffees are more. That's like the OG of coffee.
Okay.
Like coffee stems from Africa, but those are usually a little bit more bitter. That I don't enjoy that as much.
The only thing that I know definitively I do not enjoy is a Sumatra. It's too herbally or whatever the herbally, because that's why I don't drink tea. Because I like coffee. I don't want to taste the herbs. Give me coffee. But after having Sean on, we are for sure getting a sponsor. This is like,
reach out to Trade Coffee, man.
Got to.
I've heard him on podcasts.
Sean, you're a man you're a deep well of wisdom. Thank you for sharing.
So many levels.
And thank you for sharing all about coffee today.
Yeah, dude.
And of course, O&A. Thanks, dude. Cheers.
Cheers. Well, I hope you all enjoyed that episode of the podcast as much as I did. I know that Ben and I had a great time talking to Sean.
Great time and a great cup of coffee.
That was such a good cup of coffee.
Put in your orders. If you send an email, we'll just text Sean and he can just start a delivery service during the
He's
COVID.
going to need an affiliate link after that sales pitch from this company. I don't even remember what the company was called.
Trade?
Yes,
Yeah,
that's right.
where he gets his beans.
Yes. So every magical link that you need is in the show notes of this episode. We have linked out to everything O&A. Would love to extend the invite again for you to join O&A live at oneandall.church/live. You can also find live services of our weekend services there. And wherever you're listening to this podcast right now, we would love it if you would subscribe, write a review if you feel compelled, and we just want to partner with you. And that looks like a couple different ways. We would love to be in community with you. You can join our Facebook group, our Discord server, which have links in the show notes. If you love what we're doing and want to support us financially, you can do that. You can also just check out, see what we're about, visit our website, see what's going on. And a really cool thing that you can do to actually participate in this podcast is by sending us an email at media@oneandall.church. We would love to hear from you. Until next time, I'm Aaron.
And I'm Ben.
And this is the One and All Podcast.